principle I want to focus on this week is reality is a trickster. So maybe before we enter the principle, let me establish a rule. And here's the rule. Tantra means I'm in the currency of Eros of Cosmos. So there's a currency of Eros, right? Eros is the movement in reality. It's a core movement in reality, the movement of reality towards ever greater contact. And that movement of reality is animated by desire. There's a desire for ever greater contact. The feeling of desire for ever greater contact is aliveness, radical aliveness. And ever greater contact yields, generates in its wake ever greater wholeness and ever more value. That's the core of Tantra. Right? Tantra means that reality is animated, and notice, none of this, you're not going to find this in Kashmir Shaivism and Abhinavagupta exactly, although you'll find pieces of it. You're not going to find it exactly in the Solomon lineage, although you'll find pieces of it. And you're not going to find it exactly in Buddhist Tantra, although you'll find pieces of it. And you're not going to find it in Mary Magdalene Tantra, although you'll find pieces of it. But you'll also find pieces in complexity theory and chaos theory. And you'll also find pieces in molecular chemistry. And you'll also find pieces in evolutionary biology. And you'll also find pieces in systems theory. So we're weaving it together. We're saying Tantra is a universe story before it's anything. Tantra is addressing the question of where are we? And then Tantra says, now that we know where we are, the who participates in the where. That's a core principle of Tantra. And that's who I am is I don't live in it, it lives in me. Major Tantric principle. I don't just live in, anyone finish the sentence for me. I don't just live in an intimate universe. The intimate universe lives in me, right? The who participates in the where. Does that make sense? So Tantra first says, where am I? Where are we? Right? And now that I know where I am and where we are, now I know, okay, who am I? Right? Who are we? So we live in a Tantric universe, and the Tantric universe is a universe animated by Eros Valley. There's a currency of Eros. Now, the nature of that currency of Eros is conversation. Do you get that? It's like such a crazy deep idea, right? And as we live in a world in which there's a storied cosmos, and the story is animated by conversation. That's the nature of reality. And its story is not a human contrivance. And Aristotle did a good job in the Poetics trying to explain to people trying to write a tragedy in his era, how do you write a compelling tragedy? How do you write a compelling play? And he tried to understand the elements of a great story, but he couldn't quite get to, although it's implicit, the ontology of story. Right? And that story is structural to reality. There is no difference between the way I experience a great story and the objective structure of story and reality. And again, if you read Aristotle's Poetics, it's implicit a little bit, but not clear. We're saying something, let's go to the next step. Story is reality. Reality is story. Reality is narrative. Right? And I've talked a lot about that, in over the last 2 decades, about how science talks about the facts of reality, but refuses the notion of story. Science doesn't dignify reality as being a story, although it could. And that science should participate in that story. But science, understandably, right, says, no, I don't want a storyline. That's going to confuse me. Science says, no, science starts with its beautiful doctrine of ignorance. Science says, I don't know any stories. And science correctly threw out all the medieval stories, right, which basically claimed to understand why everything was doing what it was doing. Science says, no, let's start with a declaration of ignorance, which is a beautiful thing for science to do. Let's figure out how things work. So science is asking that kind of how question, that mechanical question. But of course, science needs to be integrated into the story. But science is not telling a narrative story. You do narrative in science, then the dogmas of scientism throw you out. right? Science needs to be expanded, right? From mechanics to music. That's what Nietzsche understood and wrote about so beautifully. And religion is not telling a story which dignifies fully the story of my life in this reality. Religion is saying this reality is a hallway to the next world. This reality is a simulation. Now, this reality is a simulation in part, but it's dignified, right? And that's the narrative arc of my story in this reality matters. We have to give it full dignity. We can't kind of escape to the next world and use it to justify acting in a heinous way in this world. We can't slaughter people for the sake of Christ. We can't, obsess, right? And try and destroy people and then say, oh, well, in the next world, we're all going to love each other. And it doesn't work that way, right? And there's a dignity, right, to my action in this world, right? And that there's a dignity to the storyline. So that notion of stories, that's cosmorotic humanism. Cosmorotic humanism says, right, reality is a narrative arc. And we've spent quite a bit of time, I'm not going to do it now, showing the 10 elements of story that exist all the way down and all the way up the evolutionary chain. And so Lane and I returned to our text thread the other day. That's where we have to show story all the way down and all the way up. That'll be one example of a value that goes all the way up and all the way down as Lane and I are completing now, right, this first volume to be published of the Universal Love Story. So story is the nature of reality. And story is made up of conversations. The plot line of the story is Eros value. Right? Whether it's subatomic particles coming together to form an atom, you've heard me say that about 1 billion times, but that's a plot line. Right? They're moving towards greater intimacy that creates a greater whole. That's the plot line. Deeper contact, radical aliveness, greater wholeness, more value. Okay? Now, the subatomic particles are paying attention to each other. That's what I was talking to Jim Rudd about, the complexity scientist with Zach. We're talking about this notion of attention all the way down. And Jim's like, that's crazy. That's like you're just making that shit up. Until we actually got to what we meant by attention. And we actually saw, oh, if you really understand attention in a rudimentary way and you formulate an equation around attention, this great complexity science said, oh, okay, if we understand attention in that way, we can actually see that attention moves all the way up and all the way down. And of course, there's a continuity of what we mean by attention, and there's a discontinuity. Us paying attention to each other is a different interior experience than dogs paying attention to each other, which is a different interior experience than amoeba paying attention to each other, which is a different interior experience than subatomic particles paying attention to each other. But the quality of attention moves all through cosmos, and the quality of conversation moves all through cosmos, right? And conversation means, what is a conversation? Conversation means, let's stay really close. This is crazy beautiful, okay? Conversation means there's an experience of first person, a proto experience of aliveness, right? Even though I can't talk about it, I can't articulate it, I can't write a poem about it, but there's some proto experience of first person. But not first person in, right? I am Kirsten. It's not that. When Richard Feynman, the physicist, talks about first person all the way down, he doesn't mean, right? Richard Feynman wrote these incredibly beautiful letters to his wife after she passed. It doesn't mean that a subatomic particle writes to another subatomic particle, right? After they've broken up. That obviously that's not what it means. It means there's a sense of aliveness, though. There's a first person, a fragrance, a proto pinprick, barely there. And then first person evolves. Second person means there's a space in between. There's you and me, right? The space in between the electron and the proton neutron, between the molecules, between the macromolecules, between the autocatalytic cycles of macromolecules that then intensify and generate, right? The second Big Bang, a cell. There's a space in between that second person. And then third person means there's information exchanged. Information, meaningful information. Information means meaning, code, meaning, depth, interiority, right? There's unique quality, unique information that's exchanged, right? And information is a third person term, right? The second person of information would be meaning. The first person might be value, information, meaning, value, right? But let's look at it now in third person, right? There's information exchanged, okay? So a conversation means first persons, there's two first persons, there's two distinct parts, two distinct first persons, they have a second person space between them. And that space between them, in that space between them, they exchange information. And that exchange of information generates something new. That's a conversation. That's actually what a conversation is. A conversation is an expression of contact between first persons in second person space. Two first persons create a second person space, which they exchange third person information, which generates something new. Huh? That's pretty rad. That's pretty exciting. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy, okay? So conversation is the nature of cosmos. And now the evolution of cosmos in Tantra is the evolution of conversation. Does that make sense? The evolution of reality, which is the evolution of love, is the evolution of conversation. So Taylor, follow this with me, okay? Right, Dr. Kincaid, right? We're in this together, right? Dr. Kincaid and I are thinking about this, right? Let's think about this deeply. Shahati, let's think about this, okay? David and Claire, Unique Self Institute, let's think about this. Kathy, let's think about this. The evolution of conversation means our conversation deepens. The more we move through higher and higher levels of emergence, more and more depth, the more we get to the human level, right? The self-reflective human mind, the third Big Bang. And then we go through all the levels of human emergence. There's more and deeper and wider conversations. So to be Homo Amor, to be a tantric practitioner is to become Messiah. Right? That's what the Solomon lineage says. Homo Amor is komat Mashiach, is the stature of Messiah. And the word Messiah, Mashiach, in the original Hebrew is siach, conversation. The word Messiah literally means conversation. So Homo Amor is the one who doesn't leave the conversation. Other than when it's the rare conversation that should be left, right? So, right, I'm not going to negotiate with Hitler. Okay, I understand that. I understand that we don't negotiate with raw evil. But let's be careful, right? That's rare. Basically, we stay in the conversation. We evolve the conversation. We deepen the conversation. We keep in touch, right? And Monica, you can feel when the conversation stopped, right? In other words, right, we don't talk to each other in comment threads. That's a pseudo conversation. We talk to each other. There's no one in the world I'm not willing to sit, right? There's no one that's ever been in my life that I'm not willing to sit and talk through anything with. At any point in my life, no one. I wouldn't sit for a day. Wow, we have a disagreement, we have a conflict. Let's sit, let's work it out. Let's check information. Let's feel each other. Let's check each other's perspectives. Right? Right? Let's be in conversation. Right? When the conversation stops, we stay. Right? When we stop staying, when we turn away, the conversation stops. The two cherubs in the ark above the two cherubs above the ark in the Holy of Holies of the Jerusalem temple, right? They face each other. When they turn and face each other, blessing flows in the land. The text writes, when they turn away from each other, when the conversation stops, blessing stops to flow, right? It's like, wow. So we never stop the conversation. It's deep. So I want to go into this just for a second, okay? You know, a young friend of mine, Yehu Shalem, just wrote a song called Love and Fear. It's a beautiful song about love and fear taking a walk together, right? And, you know, fear says, I'm afraid of heartbreak. So I'm afraid to love. And love says, oh my God, break my heart open so I can love more. That's deep, right? We think that there are these two opposites, if you will. And this is kind of 3 and 4 of the tantric principles. One is I'm delighted, I'm in love, I'm ecstatic, right? My heart is full and overflowing. That's the desired state. That's love. What I'm afraid of is heartbreak. My heart's going to be broken. And if my heart's broken, then I'm devastated. I'm hurt. Right? I can't find myself. Right? I can't open my heart again. I become bitter. Right? I become angry. Right? I become devastated. I become sometimes vicious or mean. I step out of the conversation. No, but that's deep. That's non-tantric. To step out of the conversation when my heart's broken is non-tantric. When my heart's broken, I realize there's nothing more whole than a broken heart, as my teacher wrote. Ein shalem milev shavur. There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. When my heart breaks, I'm devastated. But I don't then break down into bitterness. I break open into new possibility. If I've prayed for anything over the last 25 years, it's to not become bitter, to not let betrayal make me bitter, to not let hurt make me bitter. And on the other hand, let me feel the hurt and not deny it. Let me not bypass it, but let me not avoid dance around it, but let me walk through the hurt. Let me walk through the shadow of the valley of death and come out more whole. That's what Christ knew how to do. He knew how to love Judas even after Judas was Judas, right? And the Christ lives in all of us. Christ is not some guru God. Christ, we are all Christed. And we're all betrayed. And you can only be betrayed by someone who would never betray you. That's the nature of betrayal. That makes sense, everybody? You can only be betrayed by someone who would never betray you, right? And when we're betrayed, we're heartbroken. And we can only betray someone that we thought we would never betray, right? So what does it mean to actually embrace that heartbreak and heart ecstasy? Reality is a trickster, are actually part of the same dance. You can't split between them. So now stay with me, okay? I want to go one step deeper. So I can only do that if I move from ordinary love to outrageous love. And and I started talking about outrageous love the first time, and I want to go just 5 more minutes, but it's deep, and I want to get this with you. It's crazy, and it's beautiful. I only started talking about outrageous love in 2012. I was at Sally Kempton's house, and we were doing Shahati. You remember, you were there, Shahat. I don't know who else was there who's here. Maybe just Shahat. I think Claire wasn't there. Kathy, I don't know, Kathy wasn't there. It was, what was it, Shati? What was the name of the group that we were doing then? Right? It was
Circle.
What was it? It was the Circle, right?
Circle.
It was Rowdy Circle, right?
Yes.
And I couldn't, I was supposed to give a talk, and I got on, and I just couldn't find the words. It was 2012 when the experience of betrayal was so deep and so painful. And if I can just be personal for a second, I love deeply. And when you love deeply, it hurts deeply. And I couldn't talk. I literally couldn't talk. And I thought to myself in that moment, right, okay, it's done. I've got it. Teaching's done. There's nothing left to do. There's nothing left to do. And then these words just kind of poured through, which were, we live in a world of outrageous pain. And the only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. We live in a world of outrageous pain, and the only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. And I don't remember the talk, and Sally, who would never do this, but actually took notes on the talk and shared them with me afterwards, and became the core of what we call the outrageous love dharma, the outrageous love story in cosmologic humanism. And so in that talk, we distinguished between outrageous love and ordinary love. In ordinary love, your love is aroused by the other person. So you see someone beautiful, you're like, wow, what a beautiful heart. What a beautiful mind, right? What beautiful eyes, right? What a beautiful sensibility, right? So you're moved by something or someone that's beautiful in some way, or true in some way, or good in some way. You're moved by their beauty, and you fall in love. And when I say fall in love, I don't mean romantically, although maybe also, but I don't mean romantically. I mean right. You fall in love. You're like, wow, right? And we fall in love, in many ways, right? With people, with a great artist, an artisan, a friend, a teacher, right, a partner, right, right. Christina is here in right in this town that we live in, and Dr. Kincaid, KK, walks in and falls in love with all the shopkeepers. They're all excited for her to come into their store because she just like sees them and they just open as she talks to them. Right. So we fall in love because we met something that was beautiful. So that's called, in the lineage of Solomon, that's called Ava Achar Habriya. That's the love after creation. That's the love that responds to an object. But by an object, I mean, as an object relations. In other words, I see a person, I fall in love. I'm blown away. That's ordinary love, and that's great. It's beautiful. But there's what's called also Ava Lifnei Habriya. There's love before creation. And love before creation is outrageous love. So it's not responding to some dimension of the manifest world. It's who I am. I am love. That's who I am. I'm not falling in love. I'm lived as love. I am love. Love moves through me. So when I'm betrayed and my heart's broken open and I'm filled with heartbreak, right? I realize, no, those cracks in the vessel, right, need to be, filled with gold, as in that ancient Chinese method, whose name escapes me right now, right? What's it called? I think I wrote it down here.
Kintsugi.
Kintsugi, right? I fill with gold, right, the cracks. So I make the breaking, the cracks, part of the design. Right. And my heart breaks along unique contours, and those unique contours, those cracks are now filled with gold, and in the shadow is the gold, wrote Jung. And I love deeper. So my heart's broken. It's broken and shattered into 1,000 pieces. I don't become bitter. I become somehow better. I become somehow deeper. Right. My heart becomes more whole. My heart breaks open into new possibility. Right. Because my heart broke, the constriction and narrowness of my heart, right, no longer, right, constrains me. I can love bigger and I can love wider, and I can integrate my wildness and my power, right, into my care and my caution, and they kind of merge together and they create a new elixir, and I love in a whole different way. My heart breaks open. And so, Dr. Kincaid and I, Christina and I, Kik and I, we took this idea back in 2013, 14, and we created this dharma of outrageous love. And I write someone an outrageous love letter. What does it mean to write someone an outrageous love letter? And it means that I'm looking at you and you're crazy good. You're crazy beautiful. And I'm using beautiful in the Whiteheadian sense, right? You're this kind of gorgeous paradox of opposites. You're this wild trickster person, right? And I'm blown away by your truth, by your goodness, by your beauty. But that then arouses in me my own essence, which is love, which is a unique configuration of Eros. I'm a unique configuration of Eros desire. I'm a unique configuration of Eros value. Eros means love. I'm a unique, intimate configuration of the divine, of the infinite intimate, and you arouse that in me. In other words, your beauty, your goodness, your truth arouses in me my own essence, which is my unique configuration of love that you cause to come alive. So imagine it like this. Imagine that you, the person I'm looking at, you're this beautiful stone on the beach, and the sun is shining on the stone, right? And the sun makes the stone radiant. But it's not that the stone's radiant, it's the sun, right? The reason you're beautiful is because the Eros of reality configures and moves uniquely through you. But it's not, if you die, right? So often, if a person loves with ordinary love, if their partner dies, they die right afterwards. Because they've exiled all of the love in the universe to their partner. But that's not accurate. Your partner is holding uniquely right? The Eros that's moving through all of reality, right? But if they disappear, then that love that they activated in you is still there, and you find it in a different way, and you activate it in a different way, but it's there, it's who you are, right? Your beloved, your circle of beloveds reminds you that you are love, that you are Eros value, that you're a unique configuration of Eros value. So when your heart breaks, even when you're betrayed, you don't become bitter. You don't start hating life, right? Life loves you even more in some way. And you become somehow, right? There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. Now, I don't wish anyone a broken heart, right? I don't wish anyone a broken heart, but is there anyone here who hasn't had their heart broken? My heart's been broken 1,000 times. It's like heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to have your heart broken, right? It just, and if you ever had your heart broken, you know that the feeling of your heart broken is this heavy feeling. You say, my heart's heavy. Who knows that phrase? Like, my heart's heavy. Who knows that? Anyone know that phrase? Like, I have a heavy heart. When your heart's broken, your heart's actually heavy. Your heart's literally heavy, right? And you literally feel your heart cracking apart, like you can't breathe. And then you realize, no, it's not ordinary love that's moving through me. And I haven't exiled my love to that person. No. I'm not, I'm not Homo armor, I'm Homo Amor. Right? I am the Amorous Cosmos in person. That's who I am. And I may need to be fierce, but I'm always loving. I'm not lost in obsession, I'm lost in discernment. And the difference, the distinction, the tantric distinction that you can always find as true, it never fails, between the ordinary lover and the outrageous lover never leaves the conversation. The tantric master never leaves the conversation, right? Right? And when we're talking about friends, we're talking about beloveds, we're talking about people that we were close with, that we held, that we danced with, that we laughed with, that we cried with. We don't leave the conversation. We hold people in their wholeness. We hold people in their complexity. Reality is a trickster. We understand that people hurt us. Bono, we hurt each other and we do it again. We understand that people hurt us. I know the code, right? We understand that people hurt us, right? But we turn that hurt into healing, right? We turn the insult, right? We turn the insult into the wounds of love. That's Tantra. Reality is a trickster, right? Reality is a trickster, right? The things are not as they seem. It looks like I'm heartbroken, but then at that moment when it looks like I'm heartbroken, that should be the most devastating moment. This sweetness comes in and something opens when I stay in, when I don't turn away, when I don't close my heart, I don't drink it away. I don't start having 4 drinks a night. I don't stop, right? Being fully embodied and present, right? I step in. I might step in and just be silent for 15 minutes. I might step in by just chanting. I might step in by kind of, wow, I'm gonna take a long walk and just clear my mind and let the love that I am arise in me. I have to practice. There has to be a praxis. It's not a mind trick, right? It's not a Jedi mind trick. It's a praxis. But because it is my true nature, right? My heartbreak actually turns into my heart blown open, right? That's the move, what we call the move from the tragic to the post-tragic. Does that make sense? That's the move from the tragic to the post-tragic. I don't throw people out of my heart. I don't leave the conversation, right? Reality as a trickster means that at the moment in which, right, all of my wounds, because evil rests in the wound. Evil enters through the wound. And evil is the opposite of life. Evil is the conversation stops. The stopping of the conversation is always where evil starts. Polarization, all wars in the world are based on polarization. Polarization means the conversation stopped. Even if people are actually technically talking to each other, they don't have a shared field of value. They're talking at each other. There's no real conversation. As long as I'm in conversation, there can't be evil. Does that make sense? Like, it's deep. It's deep. Don't ever write. And sometimes I can be sitting, right? Sometimes I can be married to someone and I've got 17 kids and we're talking all the time, but there's no conversation. right? Conversation is surprising. I'm willing to be surprised. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to bracket, to hear you, to feel you. We're intimate. I feel you. You feel me. Pshaw, right? Reality is a trickster when it looks like it's all breaking down. It's the moment when it's all being birthed. We're in the season of a particular holiday. I'm going to end here. The holiday is called the 9th of Av in the Solomon lineage. And it's the day, can you hear me, friends? It's the day that the temple, the great Jerusalem temple, originally built by Solomon, was destroyed. For the second time, the Romans destroyed the temple. And the lineage says, on this day of fasting, this day of tragedy, the Tisha B'Av, on this day when the temple was destroyed, Nolad HaMashiach, the Messiah, was born. Messiah means conversation. And the day when the conversation seemed to end, the day the music died, the music started again. There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. To be Homo Amor is I stay in the conversation. I become the personal face of the conversational cosmos. Right? And I don't distort the story. I listen deeply, right, to my experience of the story and your experience of the story, and we come up together with a shared story. That's what we're here to do, to create a shared story of value that lives and moves and breathes in all of us, that has room for everyone and has room for everything. No one's outside the circle. Reality is a trickster. So we've brought that principle of Tantra now onto the table, right? What a crazy, crazy honor and delight to be with you, right? To be talking together, right? To be in, and that's why we never turn off the chat box, right? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Krista, ciao.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Marc Gafni. Thank you all for staying in that beautiful, beautiful, wild ride. And let's give ourselves a moment to really breathe that in, really receive everything that we were given today, and maybe write something in the chat box, maybe a heart or a thank you or anything that is alive in you right now, so your voice can be heard in the symphony and we can kind of resonate together in this beautiful, beautiful Dharma that was shared today. Reality is a trickster. And we're actually becoming tantric practitioners here together as we speak. And I was thinking about a great meme that came across my phone once, that was about what does it mean to be a tantric practitioner. And then there were all these different images, and one of them was, you can imagine what it was. It was like, my friends think it's this, my family thinks it's this, but what it actually is is sitting here on Sunday nights studying with all of my friends from across the globe, and actually knowing and learning and practicing and embodying that I am participating in the conversation of the conversational cosmos, that I am the personal face of the conversational cosmos. And that is more exciting than anything. And then to know that that conversation, and that every conversation that that you, that we are going to have this week actually participates in the conversational cosmos and actually participate in the evolution of conversation. And that's how much it matters how we show up in every single moment in our lives. We don't need to be perfect, but it is a beautiful invitation that feels so empowering and so hopeful. So I wanted to close with actually asking ourselves the question, like, how can we bring this into our weeks this week? Maybe you can ask yourself that question. I'm asking myself that question. Like, what do I want to do with this week? It might be that you want to say, okay, I really want to listen to this replay again because there were so many gems that I know I've missed as I was listening. And I want to commit to actually studying this piece this week and taking the transcript and printing it out and taking my pen and making notes and really commit to studying this week. Or maybe you want to commit to writing someone an outrageous love letter, a beautiful practice that Marc alluded to today. Like, write an outrageous love letter. And as Marc always says, to write an outrageous love letter, we have to exaggerate until we are accurate. So it's really perceiving either someone or your pet animal, what do you call it, or a tree, or all of reality. You can write to anyone and anything breathing your outrageous love letter. And it's a beautiful, beautiful practice to stay in that alignment, to remind yourself over and over and again, to really access that current of Eros that Marc was speaking about today, that current of outrageous love, and to step into that power again and again and again. So maybe your practice this week is writing an outrageous love letter. Maybe it's actually staying in conversation. Who do you need to have a deeper conversation with? Who do you need to actually deepen and deepen and deepen in that beautiful space with this week? So I want to encourage us all to bring it into our week, because we need to not only study Homo more, we need to become Homo more. We need to embody it. We need to live it. So let's do that together. And a beautiful way to practice is, of course, doing it together in our awesome Who We Must Become community platform. James is going to put a link in the chat box where you can actually sign up for one area of the platform completely for free. That way you can you can create a profile. You can create your bio there, tell us a little bit about who you are, what your story is, so we can see all the beautiful faces there together. We can communicate with each other. We can find each other there. And of course, if you're ready, please do sign up to become a member, because that is the way to resource our home and really lift this up to the next level together. And as a member, you get access to all the self-study courses, the bi-weekly courses where we're studying the book club together with Christina, David, and Jamie, studying the book Whole Mates, the relationship of the future. So there's many, many beautiful spaces to meet every day. We have daily prayer happening, evolutionary chanting. A group of us are chanting every day to tune into this current of Eros. So there's a lot happening there, and I would really, really love to meet you there and get to know each other and become a part of each other's story. So thank you for doing that, and I can't wait to meet you there on the